TIL Canada developed the Ross rifle because the British wouldn't give them Lee Enfields during the 1899–1902 South African War. After the war, the British urged Canada to switch to the Lee Enfield, but Canada refused. Ross rifle proved ineffective in World War I and Canada switched to the Lee Enfield in 1916. The title isn't entirely correct. At first there weren't enough Lee Enfields to go around, but the Canadian troops in South Africa were eventually fully equipped with Lee Enfields before going over. The rest of the Canadian militia though were still stuck with the obsolete Snyder Enfields. Then, Canada asked for the licensing to produce a Lee Enfield in country, but Britain refused because they wanted to sell their rifles. Instead they said they'd supply them to the Canadians, but Canada wanted domestic production, so they opted for Charles Ross rifle. As others have pointed out, the main issue with the Ross wasn't necessarily the rifle itself, though it did have some big issues like bolt to the face, but rather with the fact that it had a low tolerance for poor quality ammunition, and dirt and mud. The Ross was exceptional when it came to marksmanship. One of the most famous Canadians of World War I, Francis Paycock Magabo, a sniper, used the Ross throughout the war and was the highest scoring sniper in the entire war. Sir Charles Ross was an absolute fucking nut. Made a cool rifle though. Most of the issues the rifle experienced during the war were due to poor quality ammunition provided by the British. The ammo worked decently in the SMLEs, but the Ross's tighter tolerance is due to being more of a target shooting quality rifle and couldn't deal with the poor tolerances of the ammo provided. The British ammo was of poor quality due to wartime expedience and need for ammo fast. That is pretty much typical for Canadian allies: shed your blood for us but go fuck yourself. The UK didn't just refuse to sell proper weapons, they refused to license the manufacture of the Lee Enfield because fuck you, that's why. This is why I laugh when people say Canada doesn't pull its weight in military spending. We have never once fought a war on our own behalf, only ever fought to help our friends who then, without exception, treat us like shit. The factory that made them was in Quebec City, an area that is now a public park. There's panels showing the pictures of the factory there and explains its history. Also, the debacle resulted in a minister getting fired. He resigned, but Sam Hughes, the defense minister, refused to accept the problems were real till the end. There were accusations of corruption and collusion, and hence he had some financial reasons to continue supporting Ross. Excepting the Avro Arrow, Canada has made a lot of shit equipment over the years. They're currently freaking out because they have allowed their anti-tank Manpat inventory to dwindle to practically nothing, and they've realized that it's a pretty important asset to have now that Ukraine has proven what they're good for. Canadians milk off the American teat way too much. It took militaries a long time to realize that range and accuracy were less important than reliability and durability, in the context of primary infantry rifles. In fact, they basically had to relearn it several times as new generations of firearm inventors would try to optimize their rifles for target shooting. Britain also wouldn't give Canada the designs to build heavy guns for the Corvette-class ships Canada built during World War II, so every new Corvette had to do a death run across the North Atlantic with fake guns, just wooden spars, before it was properly armed. There were even more shenanigans around the Lee Enfield, like how Mauser sued the creator for IP theft and won, or how the UK outsourced production to the US for a version of it and the US went IP theft, you say, leading to the Springfield 3006 wouldn't share their good rifles to fight our first war on their behalf. Made me wait 3.5 hours to get through security at Gatwick. I honestly don't even know why we keep your controls and our money. Funny that the article points out that one of the reasons the Ross was ineffective is that the British ammo available in World War I was so bad that only the Lee Enfields could use them. Can anyone, without being a jingoistic weirdo, tell me exactly what made the Lee Enfield so good and effective and why it was better than most other rifles at the time? Isora did a video on Hoi4 where he took over the world only using Ross rifles and the Bob Simple tank. Wasn't exactly the most effective method. Really interesting read, thank you. I thought it was going to be a colonials make poor weapon type article and enjoy the nuance of the problem. In high school they made a special point of telling us how shit the Ross rifle was. Like we had to memorize the fact that the Ross rifle was a puss. Incidentally, this is when Canadians discovered the power of apologizing. Apologizing for everything has been part of their culture ever since. The gun was supposedly so bad that when soldiers tried to shoot it, it would make a noise that sounded like we were on a break. Didn't these sometimes launch the bolt assembly back into the shooter's face on firing? I think Forgotten Weapons mentioned it. This sounds so childish. Gimme the gun. No, fine, I'll make my own. Fine, you can have it. Now I don't want it. Seems like the rifle was actually better than the Lee Enfield, but the ammunition was causing issues with jamming. It was a good sharpshooting rifle though, highly sought after for sniping. Just didn't do well in the trenches. The main issue, however, was that the Ross had a tendency to jam when firing. We were on a break. To this day, Canada can't get its shit together when providing reliable equipment to our military. A piece of firearms history making it to the front page of Reddit. Have I died and gone to heaven? Canada's long history of sucking ass at actual conflict asserted itself early, it seems. But could the Lee Enfield double as a hockey stick? Need to know your audience. TF was Canada doing in South Africa? They're across the world from each other, which worked great against machine guns and millions of artillery shells. And everybody knows the Canadians were brutal in World War I. Took no prisoners. One's a single shot, the other holds 5 to 10 rounds. It's very simple. Lee Enfields should have ended up with Rachel. Much better match. The Canadians were brutal with the worst equipment available. Maybe it didn't work very well because they were on a break. Gun Jesus on the Ross rifle.